Hey, I'm going to talk to the wives and girlfriends of my TMPers who are knife addicts. Ladies, I'm sorry to say 2009, if your husband or boyfriend is a Benchmade fan, is going to shape up to be a horrible year for you. That's right, because Benchmade has come out with a lot of great new designs for 2009, and chances are your dude is going to want to get at least one of them, maybe several. Again, if they're Benchmade fans, there is a lot to like in 2009 coming out of Benchmade. Great job, Benchmade, and we are going to review one of those in this video. Let's just peruse kind of the things I'm talking about. I need to do a catalog review sometime. There's the 10350 aphid. That's new for 2009. It's a red class knife. Very interesting. Beautiful knife in the 10700 Nagara. Isn't that wonderful? That sharp clip point blade, polished, fit and finish. Very nice blade. By the way, if you see a little check mark in the box, that means I got it, and you'll probably see a review of that knife coming up in the Nutnfancy project. Check this one out. Here is a 950 Rift. I did a very brief tabletop of this last year, 2008. Kind of dinged it for some slow deployment. I think that's the model I reviewed there at a store. That's a new one. Stonewashed blade, black handle. I don't know. I love that one. I love this handle too. They're both gorgeous. This one's very reminiscent of the Microtech Amphibian to me. Yep, got a box next to it. That means I want it, at least for a review. Preferably to keep forever. Don't tell my wife. Yeah, my wife is the same like you girls. She sees me looking at blades and she goes, "Oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. Dude, you have enough blades." There's the grips, got check marks next to them because I got them reviewed as well. She rolls her eyes and goes, "Oh my gosh, please, enough knives. You've got enough." Ooh, check this one out. My wife really hates this knife because I love it. And love it means I want to spend money to get it. That's right, knife addicts. We're addicts. We really should seek professional help, don't you think? I know I should. Not going to do it. Love it. Sorry, ladies. Yep, there's lots of great designs coming out of Benchmade. This is one of them, and guess what? We are going to talk about this beautiful Benchmade offering for 2009. It's the 890 Torrent. Yes, there's a box there, and I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and check that box because the knife has been acquired in the Nutnfancy project, and bam, there it is. Abrupt edit right into the close-up view of this wonderful knife, new for 2009, the Benchmade 890 Torrent. Yes, I am a fan. Been carrying it for several weeks now, using it lightly. I didn't want to thrash on it before I reviewed it, and yes, it's mine. Sometimes I run across knives that I say, you know, I want to review that knife. I'm not too sure I want to own it. This is a knife, as soon as I saw it, held it, examined it in great detail, I was like, dude, I got to have that knife. Like you, I am also a collector of blades. I know, sick man. I've said it many times in my videos. My wife hates it, like I just said. But the sickness continues. And here comes a little detour in the review of the 890. You could do a lot worse than collect blades, especially if you have kids and you want to hand something down to your children. I mean, there's lots of things that people hand down to their kids that have meaning to them, and once they hand it down, of course, it gains meaning to their children. I think a knife collection is a superior way to do that because a knife is a useful item, unlike perhaps some other collections, like stamps. I don't mean to bust on stamp collectors, but I'll tell you, if I was a kid, I'd much rather get a knife collection, especially if it's comprised of such cool blades like the 890 from my dad, rather than a stamp collection. Call me crazy. Yep, it's a great way to connect to your kids. So the 890, yes, is mine. Haven't used it hard, as you can tell, but isn't it a beautiful knife? Look at this knife, how it's put together. Of course, the fit and finish on this 890 is superb. Would we expect anything less from Benchmade? Especially being a blue class blade. Blue class is their US line, US made. It's not the top line. I think that's their gold class. It has all the fancy stuff on it. But I think for most users, blue class is considered kind of top of the line in the Benchmade product line for good reason. They use top materials And again, the fit and finish is superb. Let's start off with the POU of this knife. I normally do that. That means philosophy of use again. How do you intend to use the blade? Now, for some users, it will go directly into their collections. They will probably not use it at all, and that is absolutely fine. That gets into the second kind of cool, meaning the blade just turns you on, you like it, you want to possess it, to handle it, to fondle it, to play with it. That's all good. You know me, Nutnfancy, I'm on board with that, guys. Absolutely nothing wrong. If you get into the first type of cool, in other words, absolute practicality, how do you think the 890 is going to serve? I will put it in the category, and this might surprise some TMPers out there, of EDC. That is, everyday carry blade. Why is that? Because normally I don't do that with these larger blades, and this is a larger blade. 3.6 inches, made of 154 cm steel. I love that steel, by the way. Good carbon content, good chromium content, so it has adequate rust resistance. Excuse me. As it comes from Benchmade, it's an excellent steel, as I've talked about in many other reviews. Namely the Benchmade 940 series. I have lots of use with it, and it's exactly the same steel. Love it. But being a 3.6 inch blade kind of makes it large for me as an EDC blade. Your mileage may vary. You may say, you know what, I like larger blades for EDC because maybe your cutting tasks kind of require it. Maybe you're on the ranch doing something where you need the reach and the depth of a large cutting blade. I dig it, I understand. But still, I'll make this an EDC blade because of handle issues. I'm going to get back to the blade here in a sec. Let's talk about the handle. And while I am somewhat enamored with the 890 Torrent, it is not all perfect. And as I go along the review, I'm going to tell you some things that I think kind of suck on the design. They're not showstoppers. If they were, I guarantee you I wouldn't own it. But they're things you need to be made aware of. One of them is, while very good looking, and they are good looking, those matte finish, smooth G10 scales do not provide a lot of traction. They are good looking. I do think they set off the overall look of the blade handsomely. They're just good looking. They contrast nicely with that stonewashed finish 154 cm blade, don't you think? Good looking. However, they're not highly textured or textured at all. Okay, and reference that SIG Pterodactyl, maybe the Recon 1 from Cold Steel, the Lawman from Cold Steel, and those are very highly textured, aggressively so, G10 scales. They provide a lot of traction in hand. And why is that important? That is, if you decide to employ the blade in a defensive encounter. Okay, heaven forbid. I always say that. No, I don't advocate it. But as emergency tools, knives function well. But in a tactical blade, oh no, there's that word again, I want more traction on the handle. And we are lacking that in the 890. It's a smooth finished micarta scale. Okay, so it's good looking, however, it doesn't provide a ton of traction, especially in a forward thrust. Also lacking is, drumroll please, booing, jimping. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, they did not jimp that short run of flat spine there on the back. I really wish they had. It would really give you something to lock onto. You don't have a thumb ramp. You don't have jimping. You really don't have anything, and the finger guard isn't deep enough to lock in the index finger. There's really not a lot that would prevent forward ingress onto the cutting edge should you engage in a thrust type movement. You with me? So those considerations put this knife for me primarily into the EDC role because it lacks those features. As an EDC blade, it's superb, and I think most guys will probably use a blade in that category, and more power to them. Let's get back to the blade. This is a Steigerwalt-designed blade. Good looking, don't you think? I love it. I like the shape of it. I like that there's belly towards the tip. It's a modified drop point, has the unsharpened swedge running down the top of the spine, which adds some real good looks. Now, in a lot of my knife reviews, I've talked to the fact that I like those flat ground blades. Not always. Generally like them. And this is flat ground from the mid portion down. It's not hollow ground. I'm so anal, I gotta wipe that off. I cannot have fingerprints on a beautiful blade like this. There you have it. It is flat ground from about the 3/4 portion, that is right around here, down. So it's not full flat ground, but it's still nicely executed. The blade as it comes out of the box is razor sharp, as all new blades should be. And I would expect nothing less from a Benchmade blade, because they normally come razor sharp. I'm a big fan of the blade, and again, like I said, it is a Steigerwalt blade. There you see it stamped. And you know what it's reminiscent of? Can't say the word, reminiscent of. This one. This is also a Steigerwalt blade. No, I have not reviewed this one. I promise I will sometime. It was the limited edition NRA Outdoors model 12410 Steigerwalt. It's a small, compact EDC blade. Love it. Great blade. A lot of similarities, wouldn't you say, between the 890 and this one. You know, disregarding the size differences. But look at the blade shapes. They're very similar, have the same type of sweep, the same angle of drop. This, of course, is a full flat ground blade. In this particular one, in 440C with a 12410. Love this knife. It has some shortcomings. We'll talk about those later. But you can see the family resemblance coming from Steigerwalt. I love his blade designs. And no, I'm not the expert on Steigerwalt. He probably has a whole bunch of other stuff out there that I'm just not aware of. Apologize for that. The blade in an emergency defensive role would serve nicely as well. I know I put this primarily into EDC, but of course, if you can hang on to it, make sure you don't let go of that blade, you're going to find that it will pierce quite readily with that unsharpened swedge and, of course, the tip, which is adequately strong. That is not a weak tip. I don't think so. I dig those blades with sweep. If you're going to EDC a blade, you've got to have sweep through here. And that's what I've said when it comes to some spear point reviews that I've said. I just, I just don't dig the really sharp razor tip. Usually, there are some exceptions. We're going to address them in another new Benchmade design here in a little bit. Nice blade. Oops, what about that thumb stud? There's that Volcano thumb stud. I've talked about it in some other designs. Generally, I am not a fan of what I term the Volcano thumb stud. I don't think it provides a lot of traction. However, in the Torrent 890, when it is in handle, you have a recessed portion here in the G10 scales, which traps your thumb against the thumb stud. Okay, and it is switchable. If you are left-handed, you can reverse it. Actually, I made a mistake. No, you can't, because that's only grooved for right-hand use. I lied. But back to the trapping is you push your hand up against a thumb stud. With that groove that's cut into the handle scale, it's actually a real easy deployment. Comes out fast and readily with that assist mechanism. And I am a fan of the Benchmade Nitrous assist. It's fast, authoritative. That's what I want from an assist mechanism. I still do not understand why you guys deactivate your assist mechanisms on various blades. I like it. If I have it and it doesn't add weight or ridiculous complexity to the knife, I'm going to keep it going. Love the assist mechanism. Very nice. And back to that thumb stud. With the design of the handle, again, how it traps the thumb against it, you can get adequate traction for the deployment, like so. See that? Fat of my thumb. Not a big issue. So, lockup, by the way, rock solid. Left and right, up and down. There is no wiggle, no movement whatsoever. Yes, you could adjust the pivot screw if you needed to, but they got it right. The 890 is outstanding in the lockup department. Other features, how's that clip? Here we go. This is kind of a downside of the 890, at least for me. Again, everyone has their preferences, things they like, things they don't like. I don't generally like tip down carry. I don't. I think it makes for a slower deployment, and you are forced with one-sided tip down carry with the 890 Torrent. Okay, that's just part of the deal. They didn't make, they didn't make it so you could swap the clip left or right or change tip up, tip down. I really wish they had. Benchmade, I know you're watching. You really need to give your users more versatility in this. Spyderco does it, and they do quite a good job of it as well. They allow their users to swap the carry clip around wherever they want. Now, this might get into the second kind of cool, in other words, intrinsic value or intrinsic coolness of the blade, and perhaps Steigerwalt did not want to ruin the knife's looks by having, holes drilled all over the handles. I understand that. And that is probably a designer preference. Say, hey, I want this knife to be good looking as well. Not necessarily the first type of cool 100%, and therefore I'm going to make some compromises and place the clip to where I think as a designer it should go, where I think fits best with the knife. So that's probably where we're at with the 890. Now, that being said, there are some good things about the clip. One is the finish. It matches the knife well. This is kind of a good looking blade, like I mentioned, polished, clean, high quality. Therefore, a polished clip, just like so, matches, don't you think? I think it goes in line thematically with the knife. No problems there. Also, the clip is deep. Very similar to, drum roll, okay, no drum roll, maybe the Trident from Sog. And yeah, we'll bring that here in a second. So it carries deep in the pocket with that loop design. That's good. I like that. I just wish we could switch it. Another downside of the clip, and here comes another criticism, which I think is valid, is I don't like these goofy Wizard of Oz type extensions on the clip. That's just my term. The clip should actually end right about here. The reason I say this is in carry I noticed that this clip, since it has this flat plateaued portion here, can run into things sticking out of your pocket, namely the sides of cars. Be very careful when you carry a clip like this. You walk against a car and you are going to gouge it. I much prefer to reprofile this, and I don't know if I'll do it with this blade or not, but reprofile it so the clip terminates right about here. And that way it can still slide onto your pocket edge readily and easily, but you're not going to have a bunch of excess metal poking out there to grab onto things. And another thing you need to consider is this can grab on and bend. Your clip can totally get tweaked because you have such a big chunk of metal sticking out there. Okay? Told you I was going to cover the details. There you have it. What is this? I'll tell you, I put this in an EDC category primarily, but you could definitely press it into service in a tactical role. Yes, I know, that's that word again. Look at that. That is a very nicely shaped pommel. I think in non-lethal, perhaps lethal depending how employed, the 890 would be devastating with impacts like so. I've talked about this in a lot of different knife reviews, how you can actually use the knife in a closed fashion to deliver some blunt force trauma impacts. You put that on a guy's thigh right by his hamstring and hit as hard as you can, bam! Guarantee you the guy's going to go down, and no, he will not be killed or permanently injured. If you employed it in other parts of the body, be careful. It could be lethal. But that is steel, guys. That is not made of plastic, and therefore it's going to deliver some devastating blows when grasped like this. Now, if you did do that, again, I'm not the knife fighting expert here, but I have lots of common sense and have some experience in the category. I would probably reverse it like so. You could carry it like that, but the knife best fits your thumb radius reversed. Just about like all blades if you're going to use them like that. Now, some guy said, hey, how do you know when to go to that? Again, I'm not going to dispense knife fighting advice. I don't think I'm the expert on that. I can cover some defensive considerations of a certain design. I think that's fair. It's integral into the review and guys' purchase decisions, and that is one of them. I love the pommel on the 890. I will say that. Love it. Other features, can you take the scales off? Yep, you can. You got some mini Torx screws there. They do a nice job on those. They're recessed, and you could take it apart. Again, I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you did a salt water dunk of the blade, and then yeah, you probably want to get in there and get it out. Otherwise, you're going to have some corrosion issues. Mostly a flow-through design on that. They probably could have done a better job of lightening the blade by skeletonizing those liners. You can see looking in there, they are not skeletonized. But the weight, the carry weight of this blade is actually quite reasonable for a 3.6 inch blade, and that is about 3.6 ounces. That's easy to remember, 3.6, 3.6. that is a reasonable carry weight. Again, I have the arbitrary 4-ounce limitation on a lot of these blades, and that's just me. As you've seen in some recent reviews, though, I don't mind going beyond the 4 ounces if I feel like the knife is going to give me something in return. Decent. There's that backspacer. That's a good looking backspacer, something that Benchmade is known for. They do a great job with it. By the way, this is a first production model. What is this? Number 94 of 1000. Yep, that's cool. I'll always take that if I can get it. The only problem with that is when that blade's stamped like that, I'm like, man, I really want to reprofile that clip to make it more carryable, you know, to alleviate those issues I was talking about. But when I have that on the blade, I'm a little reluctant to do it, truth be told. Probably not going to grind on the blade, just because if I have to sell it, you know, I want to retain its value. As soon as you start grinding on a knife, you can pretty much say goodbye to the value. Hey, let's compare the 890 against some other offerings. How about the outstanding Sog Trident? There you have it. Very similar. I love the Trident. Yes, review coming in the Nutnfancy project. Stay tuned. I know you are. There's the blade differences. Very similar. You know, the 890 also is reminiscent to me of the Deja Vu, the large Deja Vu. And there you have it in comparison against the two. Identical handle material. See that? Same. Blade shape's very different, but surprisingly that 890 stacks well in size comparison against the large Deja Vu. Don't you think? Stacks very well indeed. This is a big blade. How about the Cali 3 from Spyderco? Much smaller blade, but there's just some size comparisons for you. I know some of you guys really dig that when I do that. Cali 3 remains one of my favorite Spyderco designs. I have lots. That's the 890. I probably forgot stuff. If I did, I'll throw it in annotation. Overall, it is a superb knife, the 890. If you can get past the pocket clip, yes, the Volcano thumb stud, that isn't a showstopper. There's those phosphor bronze bushings, by the way, partially responsible for how fast the blade comes out. But if you can get past those minor setbacks, maybe the slick handles, you are going to love the Benchmade 890. It is a perfectly suited knife for a lot of users in an EDC role. A little bit big for me. Secondarily, you could press it into service as a tactical folder. Beautiful knife. Beautiful knife. I'm going to put this in my best of category. Actually, I will. I'll debate whether it goes in the tactical folding knife category or not. Nutnfancy signing off with a Benchmade 890. Oh, by the way, this won't break the bank either. I forget the price on it, but I think it was, for a Benchmade, actually a reasonable buy. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the good ratings, for being there for me. I'll be there for you. Nutnfancy out.